يجب أن يستقيل في الساعات القادمة 20 أكتوبر 2020.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Samim, and these are today's top stories. Hezbollah official Sayyid Brahim Amin al-Sayed says his party and the Maronite Church continue to foster strong relations and reiterates that Free Patriotic Movement leader MP Michel Aoun remains Hezbollah's sole candidate for president. Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja meets with a delegation of the captive soldiers' families and says the government must find a solution to secure the release of the captured men at any cost. And 25 soldiers are killed in a surprise attack in which fighters used speedboats in a failed bid to seize some of Libya's main oil terminals. Hezbollah official Sayyid Brahim Amin al-Sayed says his party and the Maronite Church continue to foster strong relations. His comments came at the end of a Hezbollah delegation visit to Kirki to congratulate Maronite Patriarch Bashar al-Rai on Christmas. The Hezbollah official says he briefed the Patriarch on the dialogue which kicked off last week between Hezbollah and its rival, the Future Movement, in a bid to ease sectarian tensions in the country. Sayed added that the party believes there is a glimmer for Lebanon at the end of the tunnel, despite the crisis sweeping the region, especially terrorist threats. He also affirmed that Free Patriotic Movement leader MP Michel Aoun remains Hezbollah's sole candidate for president. Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja says the government must find a solution to secure the release of the captured soldiers at any cost. Speaking after a meeting with a delegation of the soldiers' families at his Marab residence, Jaja said we should remain united so that God could help us end this crisis, and added it was time the government ended the hostage ordeal. A delegation of the families of the captured servicemen held by ISIS and Nusra Front have visited several officials in the past week as part of their efforts to help secure the release of their loved ones. While most political parties have backed the principle of a swap deal, some of them held reservations on the list of prisoners, including those who held on terror charges. Justice Minister Major General Al-Shafrifi has visited the Christian religious leaders of Tripoli and congratulated them on Christmas, assuring that the people of Tripoli have always been united no matter the religion or sect, despite the series of incidents that shook the capital of the north. Rifi assured that major efforts were being exerted between Christian and Muslim leaders to reveal Tripoli's true image of conviviality. The minister said, "We are in favor of dialogue and we all know the circumstances surrounding our region. We're aware that any step could contribute to easing the tension in the country." The Lebanese army has shot dead 3 militants in the northeastern border region in Arsal. A source in the town said a group of gunmen tried to sneak into Lebanon from Syria near an army checkpoint in Wadi Hamid on the outskirts of Arsal. Media reports said soldiers stationed at the checkpoint engaged in clashes with the gunmen. The military has bolstered its presence along the border with Syria since the army and jihadis from ISIS and Nusra Front briefly overran Arsal in August, leading to a deadly 5-day battle. Soldiers have since come under repeated attack in the region. Jordan's military has denied claims by ISIS to have shot down one of its warplanes that crashed in Syria after the pilot was captured by the jihadists. A military official said first indications show that the crash of the Jordanian military plane in the area of the Syrian city of Raqqa was not caused by Daesh fire, but since the wreckage of the plane cannot be reached and since its pilot is not present, we cannot at this moment determine the exact cause of the crash. Maaz al-Kasabsbeh, a 26-year-old first lieutenant in the Jordanian Air Force, was captured by ISIS on Wednesday after his F-16 jet crashed while on a mission against the jihadists over northern Syria. The U.S. military has also dismissed the jihadists' claim to have hit the jet with an anti-aircraft missile, saying evidence clearly suggests that ISIL did not down the aircraft. Syrian regime airstrikes have killed at least 37 civilians, including 7 children in strongholds of the Islamic State jihadist group. The raid struck Al-Bab and Sabsin in the northern province of Aleppo, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which relies on a network of activists on the ground. Syrian state media did not report the strikes on Al-Bab, a city of around 100,000 people that has been a target of heavy government strikesmen. since the start of U.S.-led military campaign against ISIS in Syria in late September. The British-based group said there had been an increase in air raids in the Syrian military across rebel-held areas in the last 3 days. It said at least 110 civilians had been killed in more than 470 airstrikes on rebel-held areas in Syria in the last 72 hours, including towns in insurgent-held eastern suburbs of the capital, Damascus, where the army has stepped up a 2-year campaign to retake the area. And coming up next, Asia marks the 10th anniversary of the Indian Ocean tsunami. That and more after the break. Welcome back. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he rejects the idea that Israel is guilty of war crimes as he delivered a speech at a graduation ceremony for IAF cadets at the Hatzerim Air Base near Beersheba. Speaking a day after the IDF responded to sniper fire from Gaza with an IAF airstrike and tank fire directed against Hamas targets, Netanyahu said, "We will not accept attacks against us, not from Gaza, not from the Golan Heights or Lebanon." Therefore, the IDF responded with force to attempts by terror organizations to rear their heads in recent days, he explained. He also issued a warning to Hamas, saying that Israel finds the group responsible for every violation of the quiet in Gaza, and we will act accordingly. Our preventive measures are wide, he said, and the Air Force has a central role in carrying out his policy in the air, the sea, and on land. And still in the Middle East, 25 soldiers have been killed in a surprise attack which fighters used speedboats in a failed bid to seize some of Libya's main oil terminals. Officials say fighters launched the attack on Al Sidra port by firing rockets from speedboats, setting an oil tank on fire. Soldiers damaged 3 of the vessels before clashes in which the fighters were eventually repelled. Al Sidra is the Old Crescent region that has been the scene of recent fighting between government forces and the Fajr Libya armed group. Witnesses told reporters the attack was launched overnight, and clashes were also reported from Sirte, a city west of Sidra. Military and medical sources said 18 soldiers and a Fajr Libya fighter were killed in the clashes in Sirte. 5 people have been injured after an arsonist set fire to a mosque in the Swedish town of Eskilstuna. Police say about 15 to 20 people were attending midday prayers in the mosque located in the ground floor of a residential building when the fire broke out on Christmas Day. Local media footage showed smoke and flames billowing from the windows before firefighters put the blaze out. The incident comes amid a fierce debate in Sweden over immigration policies. And still in Europe, Ukrainian and pro-Russian rebel leaders have tried to revive peace talks that stalled after just 1 round due to a stark difference over how to end the 8-month separatist war. A tense meeting mediated by European and Russian envoys in the Belarusian capital Minsk was due to have been followed by a final 1 day at which a comprehensive peace accord was signed. But Wednesday's session broke up after more than 5 hours, with a deal reached on only the least contentious of the 4 agenda points, a prisoner swap that will involve 225 guerrillas and 150 Ukrainian troops. Moving on to Africa, as the world celebrated Christmas, several hundreds walked out on the streets of Abuja to remind the authorities of the fate of more than 200 Chibok girls still in Boko Haram captivity in Nigeria. The demonstrators wore red T-shirts and carried banners in support of the missing schoolgirls. However, the march was cut short on Thursday as Nigerian police stopped the activists on their way to the presidential villa. Today is the 256th day since the Chibok schoolgirls were kidnapped by Boko Haram militants on the night of April 14th of this year. The founder of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign said she was ashamed of her country for letting the girls spend Christmas in the den of the enemies. Kekmuta, uncle of the 2 kidnapped schoolgirls in the Chibok community, said he cannot even afford to celebrate Christmas until the missing girls are back home.
We are very, very disappointed and immensely angry. We are in fact ashamed of our country that so far our Chibok girls have not been rescued. There is no reason why these girls should be spending their 255th day in the den of the enemies. There is absolutely no reason why the Chibok girls should be forgotten in the hands of their captors. We say to them is that they are human beings and they are in locations, and there is no location on Earth that is in another planet. This is planet Earth. Anyone, anywhere can be found. That is what military intelligence is all about. That is why cooperation with other nations is all about. Wheresoever our Chibok girls are, they must be found and brought back to their families.
Just terrible. It's just terrible. It's very horrible. The only hope that is keeping us alive is this very group that you are just seeing. Otherwise, as far as Chibok community generally is concerned, honestly, we are in a horrible situation. And that is the reason why.
Moving on to Asia, at least 5 people have been killed, including a child, and more than 100,000 displaced. At least 5 states in Malaysia were hit by the country's worst floods in decades. The disaster has prompted Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak to cut short his U.S. vacation in order to deal with his country's crisis. Authorities have evacuated numerous villages and towns in 5 provinces that were inundated following unusually strong torrential rains. Flood monitoring centers say more than 105,000 people have sought shelter in schools, community halls, and other relief centers. Beachside memorials and religious services have been held across Asia to mark the 10th anniversary of the Indian Ocean tsunami, which killed 220,000 in one of modern history's worst natural disasters. The devastating tsunami on December the 26th of 2004 was triggered by a 9.1 magnitude earthquake and struck a dozen countries around the Indian Ocean rim. It eradicated entire coastal communities, decimated families, and crashed over beaches full of tourists the morning after Christmas. Survivors waded through a horror show of corpse-filled waters. As part of today's solemn commemorations, survivors, government officials, diplomats, and families of victims gathered in Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, and elsewhere. Moments of silence were planned in several spots to mark the exact time the tsunami struck. International Space Station Commander Barry Wilmore and flight engineer Terry Virts, both NASA astronauts, took time away from their research to wish residents of Earth a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Here's a message to you all the way from space.
Hello from the International Space Station. I'm Navy Captain Barry Wilmore. This is Air Force Colonel Terry Virts, and we want to take the opportunity just briefly to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Terry and I, you know, Christmas for us is a time of worship. It's a time that we think back to the birth of what we would consider our Lord. And we do that at our homes, and we plan to do the same thing up here and take just a little bit of time to reflect on those topics. And also, as well, just like the wise men gave gifts, we have a couple of gifts. You'll notice some stockings behind us here. So we have a couple of gifts for each other, so we'll share in that as well.
It's such an honor, and it's so much fun to celebrate Christmas up here. This is definitely going to be a Christmas that we'll remember, getting a chance to see the beautiful Earth. And I hope that for you also it'll be a memorable Christmas this year. Have fun with your family and enjoy the day, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Hezbollah official Said Brahim Amin Said says his party and Maronite Church continue to foster strong relations and reiterates that Free Patriotic Movement leader MP Michel Aoun remains Hezbollah's sole candidate for president. Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja meets with a delegation of the captive soldiers' families and says the government must find a solution to secure the men's release at any cost. And in Libya, 25 soldiers are killed in a surprise attack in which fighters used speedboats in a failed bid to seize some of Libya's main oil terminals. Those are your Friday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice weekend.
يجب أن يستقيل في الساعات القادمة 20 أكتوبر 2020.